All right, welcome everybody to our Exam 2 review. Tonight we're going to go over a little bit of the format of our exam. We're also going to talk about the contents of the exam. I'd like to start first with any questions that our live participants may have. So Josh, Megan, Elise, if you have any questions, let's go ahead and answer them.
I have a question. I'm wondering what the best way is just to print to the screen, like in other languages.
Yeah, good question. So the answer is it depends, right? Unfortunately, with all good computer science questions, the answer is it depends, right? So for example, I use a lot of C# at work, right? And in C#, you would use console.writeLine, right? In C++, there's a method called cout, right? In JavaScript, we do console.log. So that specific programming technique is very dependent on the language. It's not like the multiplication operator that's really universal across all programming languages. So as you probably are already aware, and for the benefit of the rest of the students, a useful tool when you're debugging JavaScript is the console.log. So this is something I've seen professional software developers do when they want to know the state of their program. They'll throw in a console.log right here at this point, and they'll say, I want to know the value of discount. So they'll do something like this. Right. So at this point in the program, Google Chrome Developer Tools is actually going to print something out to the console. So let me pop this open in Google Chrome. All right, and yeah, a useful debugging tool. It looks like this student program got undefined on that specific line. So if you were troubleshooting an error, you would know that there's a problem on line 35. There should have been a value for discount, but there was not. So, does that answer your question, Megan?
Yes, just to follow up, then I don't need to do anything else in the body. If I'm just doing console.log, I don't need to do anything else lower, right?
That's right. So console.log will simply write to the console. It won't display anything to your HTML document. Yeah, this document get element by ID inner HTML is the prescribed way for CIT 160 to write content, but there are a variety of ways you can do it in JavaScript, right? If you do a document.write, it will actually overwrite all of your previous HTML and output it to the screen. So that's one we try and keep students away from.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Anyone else have a question?
So on the chat, I asked about De Morgan's law. I don't think I quite understood that. It looked like a bunch of gibberish to me.
Yeah, let's go over it. So just know that De Morgan's law means there are multiple ways to write the same Boolean statement, right? So there are multiple ways to say what you mean as well. So in English, you could say, I want 0 cookies, or I want not any cookies, right? And that would be a ridiculous thing to say in English, but that's kind of what De Morgan's law is. You use different grammar to communicate the same thing. So let's pop open the reading here. I believe that was
week 7, I think.
Yeah, thank you. So logical equivalence, right? That's basically or is equal to not and, or something like that. Let's go up here and find it in the reading. Apparently we can't search this document.
I think it just has a space in it in the document.
Okay. So De Morgan's Law, you can see here, we're going to have an evolution of Boolean statements. We start here with this Boolean statement. We want to find someone that has a GPA of greater than 3.5 and credits greater than or equal to 32. So this uses an and it uses greater than, and it uses greater than or equal to. And it takes you through the steps of how you can rewrite this Boolean statement using an or. And you can get someone that has GPA less than or equal to 3.5 or credits less than 32. Right? So it's a way of rewriting Boolean statements. Also, it sucks. Anyway, it's like I think there's one question on exam 1 about De Morgan's Law, or exam 2. Anyway, I usually give that one away as a freebie. Josh, does that help at all?
Yeah, basically what I took from it is it's just basically saying you can write the same Boolean different ways.
That's right.
What I get from it.
That's right. And it simplifies it into Boolean language like this, right? A and B is equal to not A or not B.
Okay, the arrows represent an equals.
Yeah.
That's what I didn't know that either. I was like, what the heck is that? But okay, that represents equal to. So it double equals, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else have any other questions before we dive into review stuff? Looks like we've got Artem who has joined us. Hi, Artem. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm fine.
Good. I just was telling the other students that I've got some materials I want to go through for our review, but I will answer any questions that anyone has first. So if you have questions, I'd love to answer them.
Okay.
And that's not to say that you can't ask questions if you don't do it right now. You can ask questions all throughout, okay?
Yep, sounds.
Okay. I would like to talk about the format of the exam. It's very similar to program or exam number 1, right? There's a part A, there's a part B. Part A is going to be short answer and multiple choice. And then part B, you'll be asked to run through a few desk checks, which are new for an exam, right? We didn't do desk checks on exam 1, but we will on exam 2. And of course, we will be on part B writing some programs. Okay, just another note of caution on exam 1, even though on the review I said, hey, everybody, don't write a program for the last question of part A, about half of the class went ahead and wrote a program, right? So anytime there's any question about a defining table, no code, right? 0 code. If it's about a defining table and you write only code actually and no defining table, then you lose credit there. So remember, the defining table shows the input, the processing, and the output of the program, right? And I am going to be a little stricter on part B. I want to see defining tables written along with every program. So any questions about the format of the exam?
What format do you prefer the defining tables to be in? Do you just want like a label out, input, calculation output, or do you want to use the grids? How do you prefer it?
Honestly, as long as I see those 3 keywords in any format, input, processing, output, I'll accept anything, right? I don't think you can also attach a Word document, but if you were to insert an image that had a screenshot from a Word document that had a table that said input, output, processing, I'd accept that, right? I'm just basically looking for those 3 keywords, and I'm looking for some thought into the steps that you will take in the processing section. Any other questions about the format of the exam?
Will the desk checks be like what we have on our assignments where we can check them as we go with the little like X or checkbox next to it?
They will not. Yeah, these ones, you get 1 submission. So,
Okay.
but secret about desk checks is it gives you the code. You can literally copy the code off of the page, paste it into a JavaScript program, and run through it with Google Chrome, and it will give you all the answers. And then it's basically just a copy paste. Is everybody comfortable with Google Chrome debugging?
Actually, once I learned how to use that tool, it's been extremely useful in debugging our code.
Yeah.
I've really appreciated it.
Good deal. Does that answer your question, Elise? Okay. Any other questions about format of the exam?
Do you want comments throughout the rest of the code or just the defining table?
I will not deduct any points for no comments throughout the rest of the code. Some of the videos that I've published, I take my defining table and I write a line of code for each step of my processing section. And that's just to show students that, you know, a well thought out defining table will translate into code, but it's not a requirement at all. It can just be in a block right before a function or a program or whatever. Okay, any other questions about format? All right, well, let's dive in and let's do some discussion about content. So I will say that the topics we have covered since the last exam are more heavily covered on exam 2. However, all of the topics that we've covered since the beginning of the course are present on exam 2, right? So you'll have questions about variables, you'll have questions about computer hardware, you'll have questions about JavaScript and HTML basics, about arithmetic, and also we'll do, you know, a lot of questions about Boolean logic and selection and loops, right? So tonight I'd like to write some programs from the review section of our reading for selection, Boolean logic, and loops. So I'll go ahead and pop open our selection reading first. And I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom here for the practice programs. Okay, and then I'm going to pick one of these programs. Let's see, let's do this one. A bank will not loan money to a home buyer unless the home buyer pays for part of the house at the time of purchase. This initial payment is called a down payment and is based on the cost of the home. The Bank of Ryrie calculates down payments according to this schedule. If a house costs between $0 and $4,999.99, we want to make the down payment 5% of the cost. Otherwise, if it's in this range, we're going to ask for $2,000 plus 10% of the cost minus $50,000, and so on, okay? So then it gives an example that a house that costs $126,900 would have a down payment of $7,500 because this amount falls in this range, $7,500 plus 20% of the purchase price minus $100,000, or in other words, $12,880. So we want to write a defining table and then a program that does this calculation, okay? Any questions about the requirements for this program? before we dive in and write it up? It's a steep down payment, by the way. You can do better. Don't go to Bank of Ryrie. Okay, so I'm going to pop open Notepad++, and I will empty out my HTML here. We're going to call this Bank of Ryrie. If you didn't know, Ryrie is a little town that's near Rexburg, so there's your Idaho history lesson for the day. So let's do a defining table now that we have our template HTML. So remember that a defining table, it's got three parts. We have the input, we have the processing, we have the output. All right, the input will just be the cost of the home, right? There are no other inputs. We're just determining their down payment based on the cost of the house. The output is going to be the down payment total. Okay, and now processing, how do we take that cost of the home and get the down payment total? So let's go through. So very first, I think we are going to need to get the cost of the home from the web page. And then we're going to need to, we'll say, and store it in a variable as a number. Very important. If we're going to do any kind of logic on it, it needs to be a number. So we're going to get the cost of the home from the web page and store it in a variable as a number. And then we're going to start asking some questions. We're going to say, if the cost is between $0 $49999.99, then I'll indent here so we don't run off the side of the screen. Down payment will be 5% of the cost of the home. Otherwise, just say else. That's not really the English that we would say. Else if cost of the home is between 50,000 and 99,999.99, one extra 9 in there. Then down payment will be 2,000 plus 10% cost of the home minus $50,000. Got two more cases here. Else if the cost of the home is between 100,000 199,999.99, then I'm just going to copy this sentence at this point. It's a similar case. Cost of the down payment will be 7,500 plus 20% of the cost minus 100,000. Okay, at this point, I'm going to introduce a bug into our program. So when you know what the bug is, call it out.
So do you expect our defining table to be that detailed?
I would say that no. I would say that you could do this, and if you did this, like your code would be very easy to write, but you know, something that students let me know is that this is way over the top defining table, and like I can visualize the code that needs to be written because I've been doing it for like 10 years, and I wouldn't expect someone in CIT 160 to be this detailed, but anyway, like.
But you do want us to cover all the stories.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. Sometimes the defining table, students will just put in there the formula that was given to them in the assignment description. And, you know, it's like going to your car and going on a road trip to a place that you've never been, and you get in the car and your GPS says drive to Phoenix, right? It's like, well, that's not a good set of instructions. You need to tell me to take this entrance to the highway and drive for this many miles and take this exit. So it's a fine line, right? Too much detail versus just pasting the actual formula that the problem gives you. Yeah, I usually am pretty lenient with what is provided, as long as I see input, processing, output, and some attempt at making the problem step by step. Does that answer your question, Josh? Okay. Okay, so here is my bug. I'm going to say else. I'm going to copy this, paste and paste again. The down payment will be 27,500 plus 25% of the cost of the home minus 200,000. Here's my defining table. So now that I've done this, I think I'm ready to go ahead and build my HTML program. So as noted, the input is going to be the cost of the home. We've only got one input, so I'll go ahead and write that now. I'm going to get cost of the home, input tag, ID is home, txt home cost, the type is text. I'll add a little break tag here for some formatting. The button will say calculate, and when we click the button we want something to happen, so we'll say calculate down payment, open close parentheses. Okay, got my defining table up here, so I'll go ahead and create a function. All right, and with this defining table as my guide, I'm going to go ahead and start writing some code. So I'm going to create a variable, var cost, and I'm going to store it as a number, so I know I'll need a parse float. And inside of that, I need to go to the HTML document and get the element called txt home cost. And I need, once I'm at that element, I need to grab the value out of that element. Okay, so step one.
I was under the impression in JavaScript, for most cases, you should be using let to assign your variable because the scope on the var is much larger. Are you just doing that because you're so used to C#?
Yes.
That's okay. Yeah, I had the same issue.
Yeah, like I taught this course for 3 semesters, and then they changed all of the content to use let, and anyway. Good call out, good call out. Okay, so we've got the cost of the home now. So now we need to start doing some of this else, some of this selection, right? This is a selection practice program. So let's do some selection. So I want to take this first case here, and I want to say if the cost is between $0 and $49,999.99. So there's no between keyword like there is in other languages. So we need to write this out with Boolean, right? So I'm going to say if the cost is greater than or equal to 0, or the cost is less than or equal to 49999.99, then something should happen. The down payment will be 5% of the cost of the home. So we are going to need another variable here. We're going to set it to 0. So now we need to translate this English sentence into a calculation. So I'm going to say the down payment is equal to the cost times 0.05, and that should be 5%. Okay. Before I go any further, I'm just going to add this little debugging statement here. Make sure that the program's doing what I would like it to do. Okay, pop open Google Chrome Developer Tools by pressing F12 on my keyboard. I'm going to give a number that's between 0 and 49,000, blah, de, blah, de, blah. I'm going to say my home is going to cost $10. So nothing is output to the screen, but you can see my console.log down payment right here, 0.5. My down payment is 50 cents. So yeah, that seems right. 5% of $10, 50 cents. Why not? Okay, so let's go ahead and build the rest of our cases here. I'm just going to do this because sometimes it helps to build the structure of your if statement so you don't have to come back and mismatch parentheses or curly braces. Now I've got what I need. And of course, parentheses on an else block is silly talk. So those are gone. Okay, I think I'm going to be able to use this similar Boolean statement a couple different times. So I'm going to copy that, paste it here. The second condition in my defining table is between 50,000 and 99,999 with 99 cents. So I'll go ahead and add those numbers here. 50,000 or 99,999.99. Okay. I am done with this console.log, so I'm going to delete that. But now we need to do this calculation. The down payment will be $2,000 plus 10% of the cost of the home minus 50,000. So let's translate this. Little painful memory of our arithmetic lesson, right? We need to make sure that we follow the order of operations here. The wrong thing to do would be 2,000 plus 0.1 times cost minus 50,000. Anybody tell me why this would be the wrong thing to do?
It'll multiply the 0.1 in the cost first before doing the addition and subtraction.
Exactly right. Yep. Yep. Our requirement said that we needed to. Oh boy, I've lost it now. Our requirement said that we needed to. Oh my gosh. Right here. We needed to subtract $50,000 from the cost of the home before doing any multiplication. So go ahead and add a set of parentheses here. Okay, and I want to see if my program is correct before I've written all of the guts to print it out to the page. So now at this point, I'm going to check my down payment. And let's go back to our HTML. I've saved the HTML. I'm going to refresh the page. And the console tells us we've got an error. So on line 28, oh, can't use an empty set of parentheses, so. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to say that our home costs $50,000. Well, first off, I'm going to say that our home costs $10. Because I removed the console.log statement, I'm going to verify that we're not entering this block, right? Nothing happens. Okay, that's what I expected. Now let's go ahead and make our home cost $50,000. So I'm going to calculate this beforehand. 50,000 minus 50,000 is 0. And then we're going to do this multiplication. 10% of 0 is 0. So the down payment should be exactly $2,000. Everybody agree with that? Let's calculate. Oh man, we got a bug. We got a bug. I don't know what this bug is. Sometimes my college professors were like, I totally introduced this bug on purpose to see if you were paying attention, but not the case here. I don't know what our bug is. I'm going to pull open the sources, set a breakpoint, calculate. Okay, and for some reason, we entered this block here. Down payment was $2,500, cost times 0.5. So the cost was 50,000. It was greater than, oh, okay.
Instead of or, do we want and there?
Yes, exactly right. I totally meant to do that. Not. Okay.
Couldn't we just do less than 50,000 and just ignore the 0? I mean, it's possible a house could be a negative amount, but it's unlikely, so I doubt you'd have to worry about it.
Yeah.
And then you wouldn't even need those ands.
I think that's smart, right? And I think that's safe because we're not going to trigger multiple cases. If the home costs $200,000, it's not like we're going to trigger the previous 2 cases. And actually, Josh, you found my bug because I was going to enter a negative home cost and get this really high down payment down here. But your sharp eye has thwarted my bug. So I'm going to go ahead and make the refactor that Josh suggested, right? We can just say something like this, right? If the cost is less than or equal to $49,999 with 99 cents, we know this is going to happen. If the cost is greater than that, we're not going to enter this block. We're going to come check this condition. If the home costs $50,000, we didn't trigger this, but we will trigger this, and we will stop checking all future cases. Does anyone have any questions on that logic? Okay. All right. So we fixed our bug, I hope. Let's come back in here. I'm going to refresh the page, bring back the console. Bring up $50,000, so I'm expecting to see $2,000 down payment. And the console shows me 2,000. So bug resolved, okay? So now, let's go ahead and do this next statement. Who can tell me what would go inside of this else if block according to our defining table and the structure of our program thus far?
If cost is less than or equal to $199,999 with 99 cents.
I think that's exactly right. Okay, so I'll go ahead and add that. And let's do the calculation for down payment. Down payment will be $7,500 plus 20% of the cost minus 100,000. Look good to everybody? I'm going to add my debugging statement here. Okay, save, refresh the page. So I'm going to do $100,000 I'm expecting a $7,500 down payment. I'm going to delete my breakpoint because it's annoying me. Come back here, $7,500. Okay. If I do $100,001, then I think we're going to have a $7,500 down payment with 20 cents. Yep. Okay. Good deal. Any questions this far? So I will ask this question now. Why use an else here and not an else if and be? Anybody?
It kind of closes your if. I guess I haven't played with an if statement without an else at the end really, but
Yep.
I mean it's kind of, but in since you're so familiar with C#, I don't know if you can do the same thing in JavaScript, but sometimes when you write your else ifs or your if else's, you don't even have to like include one of those. It's like you do this and then otherwise you do that. I'm trying to remember what it looks like because it's been a little while. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, in C#, a ternary operator maybe?
Maybe. But it's like an if else. It's basically you just don't have to you just don't do the other part and then you just put it down and it does it. Something like that.
Cool, yeah. So follow-up question, if I were to use an else if here, what number would I use to compare to cost?
You'd have to use a greater than or equal to, I suppose.
Right here, we said the upper limit of this range is infinity, and we don't have anything in JavaScript to represent infinity. So Josh is right. We would just have to say if it's greater than 199,999.9.
But that would be redundant and very ugly.
Yes. So we'll just keep it on else. All right, so I'm gonna just copy this line because it is a template for what we need down here below. So now I'll make this 2,000 or 27,500 times 25% of the cost minus 200,000. All right, and I'm going to add my friendly console.log here to determine down payment. So if I have a $200,000 home, I'm expecting a $27,500 down payment. There it is. Okay. Our defining table has failed us. We didn't have a step to put the down payment on the web page. Minus 10% for Brother Davidson. Now let's do a document.get element by ID. And we are looking for output div. And we'll set the inner HTML equal to down payment. Okay, the reading said if we had a home that cost $126,900, the down payment should be $12,880. So let's use this for a test value. Saved my program. I will refresh. Put this here, get rid of the comma. 12,880 matches 12,880. So there is our selection program. Any questions before we go do the next program? Okay. Fantastic. So now I'm looking for week 7 and logic. Okay, let's do this one. It'll be a little quicker and we'll try and stick to an hour. We're going to write a defining table in a program that asks the user to enter a month name, January, February, etc., and then outputs the number of days in that month. For February, output 28 or 29 days. So let's get rid of previous program. Let's call this get days in the month. This month, txt month. Call this function get days. The button will say get days. Okay, we're ready. So let's be a little more succinct here in our defining table. So the input is going to be a month name. The output will be a number of days. Now the processing. So let's make this as short as possible, right? So let's say if the user enters January, like we could come here and make this really big, right? But I don't want to do that. So someone tell me the rhyme. What's the rhyme for days in the month? Anybody? Anybody? 30 days, half September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31 except February, something, something, something. So let's do that.
I Googled it. You want me to say it?
Let's hear it.
30 days, half September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31, excepting February alone, and that has 28 days clear and 29 in each leap year.
Adorable. Thank you. Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. So if the user enters September, April, June, or November, put 30. The user enters February, the program tells us to output 28 or 29 days. And introduce a bug here. If the user enters anything else, output 31 days. Okay, let's go ahead and write this. We said that our function name will be getDays. Let's go ahead and create that function getDays. All right. So very first, we have our month input tag here. So let's say let month equal to document by ID month value. Now let's write our logic. So let's say if we need a variable for our days, so let days equal 0. So if you were to say this in English, well, just as we've typed it, if the user enters September, April, June, or November, we want to output 30. So a common mistake students make when they're doing logic is they'll do something like this. If month is equal to September, or April, or June, or November. Right, this is how we would say it in English, but this actually isn't correct JavaScript syntax. We need to be very explicit. We need to talk like we are, I don't know, just learning English and say, is the month September, or is the month April, or is the month June, or is the month November, right? So we need to make sure, and always on either side of the or the and, to have a complete Boolean statement. And I like to format it just a little bit better so we don't run off the edge of our half screen here. All right, so if the month is September, or the month is April, or the month is June, or the month is November, then we need to set the days equal to 30. Okay. I'm actually not, well, yeah, I am. Yep. I'm going to use an else if. Now I'm going to say if month is equal to February. We need to say that the days is equal to, oh man, we're putting a string into a number, 28 or 29 days. So probably we should make this a string up here. It's a string, 30 days, 28 or 29 days. And here's my bug. So I'm just going to then say else 31 days, right? Because all of the other months have 31 days. Then let's just output it to the output div. We're going to say document.get element by ID, output div. And we're going to set the inner HTML.
Does that 31 days need a days attached to it? Like a days equals 31 days?
Oh, yep, yep. Very good. That wasn't the bug I was thinking of, but that was a bug.
So the bug, I believe, is just that they could misspell the month and it would output 31 days. And
Yes,
so we kind of have to catch that and say, hey, you need to
Yeah.
actually type the right month.
they could also type pizza or lawn chair and they would get 31 days, right? So very good, very good.
And we're missing a semicolon on line 23.
Also a bug, yes. Now you're just making me feel bad. Okay, so let's go ahead and do as Josh said. Let's check for the other months. So we need to check for January. We don't need to check for February, but we do need to check for March. Okay, we also need to check for July. We also need to check for August. What am I doing? Days? Goodness. Okay, let's make sure we don't run off the edge of the screen here.
So does that need to be else if then, if you're putting conditions in, or can it stay else?
Nope, definitely else if. If we had just kept the else, we would get the console yelling at us. Uncaught syntax error, unexpected token, curly brace, right? So. Good catch, good catch. All right, and now I think we just need to check for December. All right, we have January, February, March, April, Oh, May. Oh, man. Month. June, July, August, September, October. November, December. Okay. Go ahead and try it out. Refresh here. Very first, I'm going to try my lawn chair. 0 days. Maybe I'll just say not a month. Not a month, comma, follow the directions, please. Exclamation point. Let's try that again. Now let's try January. 31 days, perfect. Let's try February. 28 or 29 days. Try March. Okay, and now for the reason why you should never become a web developer, I'm going to type March, which is a valid month. Not a month, follow the directions, please. It's because this double equal sign is case sensitive, right? We've said if the month is equal to March with a capital M, but I typed in March with a lowercase m. So the lesson is never become a web developer. Your life will be filled with pain. Just kidding. Any questions about this program before we move on to our loops program? Okay.
We probably could have, on this one, to avoid all those if-else's, you probably could have created a dictionary. The month could have been the key, and then you could have assigned each month its days, and then just do a for in, and then search the dictionary with the input, and then once it matches, it'll bring up the value for that one.
Yep. Yeah, we
Does
could have
that
done
make
that.
sense?
Yeah, that's you know, sounds like you've been doing a little side work there, so that's beyond the scope of the course, but good job, Josh. There's also a way you can take a month like that and turn it into a JavaScript date and then get the days from that month. So couple different ways we could do that, but yes, like all programming, you could solve it 1,000 different ways. Okay, let's go take a look at the week 8 or the chapter 8 reading. So let's do this program right here. We're going to write a defining table and then a program that outputs some calculation, right? So we want to see what will be output to the HTML. We're going to input a single integer, and then we're going to show a couple different calculations, right? We're going to show the number that was input, and then we're going to count up to that number. So we start at 1, 2, 3, and then we go all the way to that number. And then we're going to show 1, 2, 3, 4 different calculations. We're going to show the number times 2, the number times 3, the number times the number, and the number times the number times the number, right? Any questions about what we're going to do in this program? Actually, I'm going to do this one in Visual Studio Code just because sometimes I realize students are less familiar with Notepad++. So here we are in Visual Studio Code. And
Is there any reason why you would use Notepad++ over Visual Studio Code?
No, just again, habits of myself, right? I don't use Notepad++, in my job, never have. I've always used Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio, some other version, but I would say a lot of students use just Notepad++. It's a lot lighter weight program than Visual Studio Code. However, I always recommend that we use Visual Studio Code because although it is a little steeper learning curve, like this is what professionals use to write code. So does that answer your question, Josh?
Yes.
Okay. So I've got my Visual Studio Code set up with an extension to preview my HTML so I can see it typed here as I'm typing. Right, because we're at an hour now, I'm going to skip the defining table, but I also recognize that Brother Davidson would give me half off because I skipped the defining table. But let's go ahead and write this program. So we need to get a number, then we need to do those 4 calculations. We need to do those calculations for every number between 1 and the number that the user typed. So let's go ahead and start building that. So I'm going to call a function get results. All right. Now inside of this function, I need to reach out to the document and go get that number. I am going to treat it as an integer this time just because our table is going to explode if we have decimal places. I'm going to get to the document. I'm looking for text candidate. Grab the value. Okay. Now that I've got this from the document, we need to do a loop, right? So you can write this as a while loop. You could write this as a for loop. I'm going to write it as a while loop for now, but just know that here at the end of the program, we could definitely rewrite it as a for loop. So I'm going to say while, I need a counting variable. So I'm going to go declare that let counter equal 1. While counter is less than or equal to, didn't name my variable, whoops. We also need a variable here for result HTML. We need to initialize this with this function header here, or the table header. So I'm going to add this, but something that we need to do is use the escape character for tab. So I'm going to go ahead and add that here. This will make it so that our numbers will line up a little better when we're outputting them as a table. I'll add a break tag. Okay. So we need to start appending to this result HTML the result of these. So very first, we want to say result HTML. The first thing in this string is just the number repeated. Oh no, this is our counting variable. So let's go ahead and add that. Counter. And then to stay consistent, we want to add our tab character. Okay. Next, we want to add the next calculation. The next calculation is 2 times the current number. So let's do that. Counter times 2 plus the tab character. While I'm thinking about it, I'm going to come down here and increment the counter by 1. Because if I don't, that's an infinite loop. Result HTML plus equals counter Next calculation is counter times 3. Result HTML plus equals counter times counter. Then finally, we want to add to our HTML string counter times counter times counter, and a tab. And also a break because we're at the end of the line. Okay, we've got that. Hopefully it works. Probably have a bug, but let's go ahead and set the HTML to our output div. Okay, so let's save that. I think JavaScript is disabled in this little window over here. Yes, it is. So I'm going to go find this file on my computer. I'm going to open it in Google Chrome. I'm going to open Google Chrome Developer Tools to see if I have any errors. And then I'll enter 10 and breakpoint. And breakpoint. Uncaught type error, cannot set property inner HTML of null. Okay, we got a bug. And the bug is I didn't put quotation marks around output div. Okay, I've saved my file. I'm going to come back here. Okay. It looks like we did not get our tabs. Bummer, man.
And this is where you get a bazillion answers that don't relate to what you're looking for.
Yeah. Okay, horizontal tab with the /T.
So are you going to have one like this on the exam? Because I find this one just weird.
No,
Like
no.
months make sense to me, the others make sense, but when you're like doing weird stuff like this, I'm like, what? It's hard to visualize.
Yeah. No, the ones on the exam are not like this. The ones on the exam are like scientific, well, I won't say, but the ones on the exam more closely map to what you've been doing every week, right? There's a reason that this example program is not the one that you are assigned, and it's because it's a little funky, right? There's really no real world application for this, but there is real world application for, say, calculating the square footage of your house, right? This is just a very contrived example. Yep. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and call it unless anyone has any questions. Anything that...
Sorry, one question. So when you have us writing our defining tables, I noticed that you were putting them as part of your code. Is that, it's a separate thing, right? The defining table will be separate from the code.
So yes, it can be. Like the example from chapter 2 shows you like a Word document that actually has a table in it with a header row and with another row with all of the input and stuff. So the defining table as you're writing your program each week, yeah, absolutely can be that, and because you can submit multiple documents.
Okay.
When you do the exam, you're only allowed to submit the HTML document, right? So I would make it part of your code, or email it to me. That would also be fine. If you want to do a Word document, just email it to me. That would be fine. Or some other format that's not in code. Okay, any other questions? All right, well, I wish you all luck on the exam, and yeah, let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to now spend a couple hours grading, so I'm gonna go get cozy.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah,
You too.
thank you so much.